Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another live stream and welcome to a general Chelsea chat, assessing the season so far, looking ahead to the next run of fixtures. Me and Dan were just chatting before we come on how this international break seems to have dragged more than any other in recent time and has been one of the worst in terms of just anything going on whatsoever. I don't think there's been anything really worthwhile Chelsea-wise in terms of news since we played Liverpool. I mean, you're not expecting loads of things, but there haven't been an awful lot going on. We're going to have a little discussion about the season so far. We're going to look ahead to the next run of games between now and the international break. Can we continue that momentum that we got from the Liverpool win? There's loads to dive into, as always. Big up to everyone that's already locked in. Make sure you smash up the like, subscribe if you're new around here. All of that good stuff. We've got a few bits to go through. Chelsea reportedly have got money to spend in January, but they'll only spend it if they feel there's someone who can make a real difference to the squad. We've got, obviously, the latest on injury news as well. And yeah, we can have a small look ahead to the Forest game. Bit of an update on shirt sponsorship situation as well, which for some reason, inexplicable reason, we still don't have one. But before we get into it, just a quick reminder, as always, guys, make sure you check out Jerseys FC Soccer Shop. Link is in the description. Use code BLUEBROTHER for 20% off. Great quality, affordable prices, names, numbers, patches, whatever you want on the back. Make sure you check it out, guys. Use code BLUEBROTHER for 20% off. And as you can see, guys, I'm once again joined by Dan. Bro, how you doing? You good?
Yeah, well, good, Charlie. Glad to be here. I completely agree with you. Obviously, we were chatting about it, but the international break has been dire for Chelsea and I think for England as well. I just don't think it's been an exciting international break. And we were saying how pointless it seems that some of our players who have had, a busy summer are off gallivanting around the world, risking injuries, risking fatigue. And that's the last thing we want for our squad, considering how many injuries we've got. So, yeah, I can't wait for the Premier League to get started and get playing again, to be honest with you.
No, 100%, man. I mean, this Forest game can't come round quick enough. I think that's a good place to start, though, in terms of, talk about injuries. I mean, I know it's only October now, but how important do you think it is that the likes of Caicedo and Reece James, for example, didn't go on this international break and they've stayed back at Cobham? That's just two players. But for someone like a Caicedo who literally plays every minute of every game, he's normally plays all the time for Ecuador as well. How much of a bonus do you think that is for him to just have? I'm not saying he's not doing anything, but just no travel, no playing. He can just sort of have a bit of a refresh at Cobham. I mean, how important do you think that could be for us?
Yeah, I think that's massive. I think for Reece, for Caicedo, I think players. Reece obviously hasn't played nearly as much as Caicedo, right? But we all know where Reece is with his injuries, and we need him wrapped in bubble wrap literally all the time, cotton wool when he's not playing, make sure that he's fit for as many minutes as possible. Someone like Caicedo, for me, he's the sort of player that I wince whenever he goes down in any challenge because I know how important he is to our team. So if we can find any time to rest him and just give him a bit of a break, I think it's essential. I mean, I always think with our South American players that the traveling they do it's the fatigue it must add on to just, their general training and them as people. I honestly think it can't be good to do as much as they do and then us as fans to expect the levels. So yeah, any break, especially our South American players can get, I think is absolutely massive.
I mean, we've got quite a lot of them now as well. It's not just like it's one or two. It's Esteban.
Enzo picked up an injury, didn't he?
Yeah. So Enzo was a bit strange, right? So he obviously went to the Argentina duty, played in the game against Venezuela. He wasn't going to play in this game against Puerto Rico, I think tonight or tomorrow, whenever it is. He wasn't due to play in that game anyway, but he's returned now with some swelling on his knee or something. So they've sent him back early. When I was at the Liverpool game, I did notice when he was warming up, he did warm up with tape round his knee. And we know that, him, Caicedo and João Pedro, it's been reported, have been playing through the pain barrier a little bit. It is a concern. I think he'll probably be all right for the Forest game. At least he's come back early, so there's not going to be none of that returning in the late hours on like a Thursday night or a Friday morning. You have one training session and you've got to go and play a fucking lunchtime kickoff. But it is a concern. And, I don't know. Do you think, I'm not saying us two necessarily, but maybe to a certain extent, do you think we've underestimated how big an impact the Club World Cup's going to have on the squad and the fitness of the players?
I think I have, definitely. And I think some other fans may have done the same. I don't think we really realise as non-players just how much of an effect losing a whole summer can have, not getting a full pre-season, not allowing the players to sort of have the break and the switch off that they need, and then come back with the right sort of amount of time. And I think we can see in our squad already that, you know, we're seeing a load of injuries creep into the team. And like you said, we're only in October, and we've had, you know, a number of key players in this squad either suffer or are suffering from injuries. And I think a lot of that can be put down to the Club World Cup, because you look at other teams around the globe, a number of PSG players, they're not fit. They've got injuries. Real Madrid players, they've got a couple of players there picking up injuries. A lot of teams that went to the Club World Cup, no matter how far into the competition they went, they had their players' summer disrupted, and I definitely think it's led to injuries.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, I think we've all been a bit naive of thinking, it'll have some effect, but it won't have that much of an effect. But as you say already, mate, we're 7 games into the Premier League season, and we were missing 8 players against Liverpool. You know, that's almost going back to sort of Pochettino levels of injury problems. Like that injury list would come out, and like every week there'd be like another 2 names added to the list of missing players. Now, this is where the break's been beneficial for us. Obviously, you want to build on that momentum from Liverpool. You would have ideally liked to have played at the weekend to keep that momentum going from like a late win like that can give you. But I suppose the positive from it is it's given us 2 weeks to recover players. You know, for example, with the Delap injury, not ideal, but, you know, 6 weeks of his recovery is international breaks, you know, September, October and November. So whilst he's missing a lot of games, if you're going to be injured, I suppose in a period where there's 3 international breaks, like in quick succession, it's not a total disaster. But I mean, Maresca has got to make better use of the squad. There's no doubt about it. You know, players that maybe he doesn't fancy are going to have to play probably significantly more minutes than he has been given them. We saw Mark Guy get his first minutes of the season against Liverpool. Gittins is probably going to have to be used more, and whatnot. I mean, bro, do you think he's going to start using those guys more now? I mean, obviously, I know he's probably waiting for them to be ready or whatever, and, you know, wants them to have training under their belt, wants them to impress in training and all that stuff. But I think we're at a point now where there's a lot of fatigue, there's a lot of overload. Players are playing too many games. Squad players that maybe he doesn't fancy or particularly rate, they're going to have to be given significant opportunities now, because we have to balance the squad.
Yeah, we touched on this a bit, didn't we? The last time we were speaking, I think it was just before the maybe the Benfica game. And we sort of said, like, there's so many players here that he sort of is neglecting using. I think he arguably gave a couple of them a chance in that game. A couple of them got, you know, more minutes than they were probably used to in the game against Liverpool, and it almost paid off. I mean, Gittins probably looked a little bit better than what he had done against Liverpool.
That's the best he's looked this season. Yeah.
Garnacho, I thought, looked really like promising in that game as well. I think obviously Esteval we've seen, but he's another player that, you know, at times has lost minutes due to other players' sort of failures or mistakes. And I think they're the sort of Mark Guy obviously come on in one of the games as well. I think and played his part. And I think that's the thing. These players are hungry to play a part, are hungry to be part of Chelsea. I think Maresca needs to respect that a little bit and give him the game time. Now, I'm not saying you rely on these players in moments, but what you do is you use these players so that you can rely on your bigger players to be fit and ready in the moments that you need them and in the games that you need them, probably more often than not. So the other players, you know, they take that 20 minutes at the end of the game and they put an absolute shift in. And I'll tell you what, for Maresca to not believe in some of those players, I do think it's criminal, to be honest with you, because how many times last season, you know, there was that sort of period in time where he was turning to Tyreek George, for example, and the guy was coming up with goals. And I think you kind of sometimes find these players out of nowhere just by giving them game time, just by allowing them time to develop. And then you can believe that you can trust in them. I think Badashile's done a really stellar job in the last couple of weeks, actually. I've been sort of not impressed, because I think I saw what he was capable of when he first ever came in, but I don't think he's really been at that level for a while. And I think he's been okay. And I think someone like Hato, obviously playing in a different position, they're the sort of players that I think ultimately Maresca needs to give more game time to allow our other players a little bit of rest and recovery and that extra bit of time to be ready for the next game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm hoping that. I mean, look, like you, I'm not like desperate for Gittins to be starting like regular games or whatever, but there does come a point where these players need to be used. And Gittins, right, in fairness to him, in this international break for the 21s, has had a couple of decent games. And I know it's the 21s, and I know it's not against the best level of opposition, but when your confidence has been low, when you've not had the best start, any sort of decent performance is going to be really beneficial to you from a confidence standpoint and just kind of taking yourself forward. I mean, Tyreek George scored a goal for the 21s as well, assisted by Gittins the other night.
Tyreek George was someone I wanted to ask you about, Charlie, actually. Like, do you think Tyreek George is the sort of player that maybe has been misprofiled or believes he's better in a different position than what he actually is? Because I look at Tyreek George and think there's an unbelievable knack for scoring goals in that player.
Mate, his ball striking is ridiculous, but he's not
really good.
The thing is, though, he's not a centre forward.
No, he absolutely isn't. Is he a poacher? In the sense that someone else probably leads the line and takes on the role of, bullying the centre back and having that battle. But he's the sort of player that, you throw on and have in the box for the last 18, 20 minutes of a game or, the last few minutes. He might come up with a goal. I feel like his finishing is really good.
No, his finishing and his ball striking is very good. I do agree. I look at him and think, I mean, look, he's still very young, but from what we've seen of him so far, for me, he's not impacting games if he starts.
Yeah,
but as someone to come on for 15, 20 minutes at the end, he can have. I personally feel like he's more of an impact player right now. I think he'll probably be sold in January or certainly in the summer. So this is his last season for sure at Chelsea. But yeah, look, he can have an impact, but he shouldn't be starting games. We saw against Benfica, he started up front, and he was terrible. Now,
he can't lead the line, can he?
No, he can't lead the line. And you almost feel a bit sorry for him in that sense because it's not his position. And the manager's putting him in a position where he's not really going to give you much. But I do agree with you, mate. Like, if a chance falls to him with that ball striking he's got, we saw it against Lincoln, we saw it against Fulham last season, we've seen it for the 21s the other night. Yeah. The guy's got serious ball striking ability. And I think for like a final 15, 20 minutes of a game, it's not a bad option to throw on. I know, like, it's not like, oh wow, it's like a game-changing option, but it's someone that can cause problems. And someone if a loose ball falls to him in and around the box or just outside the box, with that ball striking ability, he's definitely someone that has got the potential to come off the bench and cause problems and stick it into the back of the net. But look, how good is Tyreek George going to be? I've got no idea, but we're not going to find out at Chelsea because he's simply not good enough. Is the ultimate reality of that situation. But look, I think between now and whenever he goes, I do think he can make some sort of impact from the bench. Now, I want to talk about this quickly because I mean it's probably just a classic club line, but. This is from Nizar. Chelsea have money to spend in January, but are currently happy with their squad and would only sign a player capable of taking the club to the next level. Now, obviously, we know there's money to spend. We will spend money with that. That's nothing new. What players do you think fall into that category, that bracket? Because clearly in the summer, they didn't feel that Mike Mignan was a player that would take them to the next level because they didn't pay the money. So what players are we thinking fall into that category?
It's really tough, isn't it? Because I think it's probably got to be a player that is of an age probably under 25, maybe
for sure,
a little bit younger. That is, on a huge trajectory, a huge upwards trajectory already. And I think you look at a player like, I don't know, Julian Alvarez, for example, absolutely flying this season for his age, sort of fits the bill that maybe Chelsea would look at. I think players like that are the sort of level you've got to go and look around at some of the best young talent in the world. And maybe Chelsea are willing to, break the bank for those players. But then I also think it's got to be a player that is potentially happy to be on wages that the top clubs probably will pay much more than, and Chelsea won't. So I think it's a real particular signing that Chelsea are looking for, I think, if they're going to fit into all their categories. But they are out there because we've done well with players like Cole Palmer and players like João Pedro have come in. They look really promising.
Problem I've got with this is that we constantly hear Chelsea. We heard it a lot. Chelsea are prepared to, go big, and they're prepared to break the bank on an older player or whatever, if they feel that they can take the team to the next level or whatever. We've heard this reported a number of times. The reality is that the evidence is not backing up what's being reported, because this has been mentioned numerous occasions, and we have not done that at all. We have not sort of gone above the wage structure, looking to bring in proven players. I mean, I was at an event last night with JT and Mikel, and they were talking.
Oh, yeah, decent. Was it good?
They were talking about, they got asked about players that could to take the club to the next level, and he sort of looked in the summer, and
did Mikel say Osimhen?
They did talk. He did mention Osimhen, but only because it was asked in the question. To be fair,
yeah.
But you look at it, right? And Donnarumma, Mark Gurhey, and Osimhen were all available this summer.
Yeah,
that is, and JT was saying this, right? He was saying, I don't expect Chelsea to sign an Alexander Isak, but he's like, this is Chelsea Football Club. We should be in the conversation and in the race to sign players like this. Why are we not in the race to sign these types of players? And I think he's absolutely got a fair point. I know we know that's not the model. I think we're fully aware that we're not going to get every player that we go for. But why are Chelsea not in for a Donnarumma? Why are they not in for an Osimhen, for example? Why are they not in for these kinds of players who exactly fit this, who are capable of taking the club to the next level? Donnarumma would have done that. Osimhen would have done that. And Isak or whatever, they would have done that. I'm not asking to sign all these players, but we're Chelsea Football Club. We should be at the table and at the conversation for these players, and we're simply not. Any top player that comes on the market, no point getting excited about it, because full well we're not going for it.
Yeah, I feel like the very first sort of couple of transfer windows, I think they've scarred this ownership a little bit with the players they bought in and the amount of wages they got put on and the performance they got out of that. And I think they realised that for them, they feel more comfortable buying players with, a lower current price, a lower wage bill with a higher ceiling. And I think that's the method they're going to go for. Do I think that's right? No, I think that's the sort of method that a profit-making selling club probably follows. And I think there's no reason Chelsea can't do that, but there has to be a bit of a balance. And I think as a fan base, and, listening to someone like JT, who I think the fan base embody and believe in what he has to say, because that's the player that, led this club for so long and knows what it takes to be at the very top of the game. We're going to buy into what John Terry says, and we bought into what John Terry did on the pitch, right? And the way the club was run then. And I think we probably, as a fan base, don't necessarily 100% agree with our transfer strategy as a complete set direction this club's working in. I think we could go into the market, break the bank for some players, put them on higher wage bills, and reap the rewards of that. They're not all going to turn into like Raheem Sterling and Koulibaly if you do your data analysis right on these players and you do your research, you do your due diligence. These players will pay off because you see them move to other teams and still do a really good job.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I think, look, the model is what it is, and it certainly showed signs that it can work, and there has been some level of success from it. However, there's no detracting from the fact that you are making things a lot harder for yourself if you're not signing established stars in key areas. Like the fact that we've spent all this money, we've signed a lot of goalkeepers, by the way, and we still don't have a top goalkeeper is mental. I think the same with the centre backs. We've signed so many centre backs, yet probably our best one costs nothing in Levi Colwell, and the rest of them are they're kind of average, which seems mental. really, when you think of it. And you look at someone, I mean, look, Mark Gurhey, again, is someone that I've spoken about a lot, someone that I think could make a big difference to Chelsea from a defensive standpoint. Why are we not trying to sign him? Like,
Yeah, I think especially with his links to the club, it almost seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? But I feel like, I actually feel like we've lost out on that deal now to Liverpool. I feel like Liverpool have probably got that wrapped up for the next window. I'm not certain that's the case. I'm not in the know or anything, and I know it nearly happened this summer, but I feel like the way their defense has sort of been early on this season, they're probably regretting not getting that deal done. And I think he'll be through the door at Liverpool before we know it. So, yeah, unless, by the way, a bigger fish decides to move for him, in Real Madrid or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think some top clubs will be looking at him with 6 months left on the contract. I mean, I don't know if Palace will sell in January. They might feel forced to, but yeah, it's just weird. Like, it's so annoying because we do some decent stuff, and then there's like blatant things that would make us better that are very viable, and we just choose not to do it. I mean, I think just quickly, I think the biggest thing that would sum Chelsea up would be not to spend the money on Mignan in the summer, but then buy him in January.
Yeah.
What is the point in that?
Or moan about, I think 3 million, was it 4 or 5 million? It
Yeah,
wasn't much.
5 million tops, really.
So I personally think that if we really wanted Jamie Gittins, we probably could have got him for 50 million off Dortmund, right? But we paid 55. So I think you could find 5 million off the price of Gittins, because 50 million is still an exceptional value for Dortmund to get for Gittins, right?
Yeah, they're laughing.
Do you know what I mean? This is an example. I don't know if those figures are exact, but it could be Garnacho for 35 or 40 million. It's still a good fee for the club to get for that player. Someone like that 5 million on someone like Mainan that is miles above and way better than what we already have in terms of goalkeepers. I think that 5 million is so much more better off being spent on a player of his quality than it is on an extra 5 million on an already hugely inflated fee, if you see what I mean with that.
Yeah,
so
no,
you can find that 5 million from like 5 other deals this summer, and we probably could have got him through the door.
Yeah, mate, I fully agree. It's just like the thing is, right, with goalkeepers, there's not many top goalkeepers on the market. So when you get an opportunity presented to you to sign a goalkeeper who is one of the best, yes, he's only got a year left on his contract, but the fact that you think that you could have done that deal for 18 mil, right? Milan, I think, wanted around. You could have done the deal for 18 mil. Forget, all right, he's got a year left on his contract. He's 29 going on 30. You might think, okay, that's a bit much with a year left. However, goalkeepers 29 going on 30 is not like outfield players.
No.
You could get 5 or 6 decent years out of Mignan easily. And they just chose not to. When you just look at it and you think, every team that wins something has got a phenomenal goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Man City with Ederson, Liverpool, Alisson. Arsenal got David Raya now, who's a very good goalkeeper. Real Madrid have got Courtois. PSG had Donnarumma. They've now gone and signed Chevalier, who's again another very good goalkeeper. You might obviously younger than Donnarumma, but very good up and coming goalkeeper. Like, all the top sides that win the big things have got phenomenal goalkeepers. And unless I don't know what's worse, the fact that they think Sanchez is in that bracket potentially, or the fact that they just think what we've got's good enough.
I think what
we've got is so poor. It really is.
I think the overriding factor for every single signing at the club currently is the financial aspect of what the player can offer going forward to the club. Is there a value on that player's head after a certain amount of years, time, development, however that is, performances? I think the goalkeeper is probably the least fashionable, not necessarily the least desirable, because I think every team wants a top goalkeeper, but I almost feel like it's incredibly difficult to find a goalkeeper to generate a huge amount of money from. And they have to be signed at a young enough age that they develop into like your Courtois and can be viewed as a huge asset. Now, obviously, like Courtois. I can't remember. Did we get much of a fee for Courtois? Did he run his contract down?
No, he wanted to go to he wanted to leave for Madrid.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much money we got.
I thought it was about 60 in my head, but I'm not sure that's right or wrong. But
no, man,
I don't feel like many goalkeepers move for much of a fee. That's
no, they
basically
don't. The most expensive goalkeeper is like 40 million or something.
Yeah.
Wait, Thibaut Courtois transfer fee. I mean, how much did we get for him?
I thought 60.
We got 35 million for him.
That is crazy when you actually think about how good he's been and how crucial he's been for Real Madrid and how good he was for us as well. 30 million is absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
the fact we then replaced him with Kepa for 70 million is just...
for twice the money. But yeah, I mean, look, the reality is that, you know, Courtois, but and this is what I think they are with. This is what I think they're looking at with Penders, right? And it's a very risky strategy because they bought Penders young from the same club that Courtois spent last season in Belgium. He's now at Strasbourg, where by all accounts he's doing reasonably well. But this is his like first sort of 7-8 games in one of Europe's top 5 leagues. When is Penders going to be ready? Because the kid's 20, right? He turned 20, I think, a couple of months ago. Now, I'm not saying that he's not good, but in my opinion, depending on how he does at Strasbourg this season, for me, he then needs either another year there or he needs to have a Premier League loan somewhere, just to get playing in the league regularly. But I can see it now. I mean, obviously, slightly projecting ahead, and this is just an assumption. But if Penders does well, bro, I really wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea stuck him in as number 1 next season, and that kind of scares me a little bit.
It does scare me, and it doesn't scare me at the same time. It scares me because we're putting in an inexperienced kid in goal. We don't know what he's about. I think the promising side of that is how much worse than Sanchez can he actually be, no matter if he's 20 or he's 25 or whatever. Like, because Sanchez for me is so far down the pecking order of where I believe a goalkeeper should be. I don't know how much worse Penders can be if he comes in next season after a promising season at Strasbourg. The good thing with Strasbourg, right, is we all know where Petrovic was at and his level. He had a good season at Strasbourg last season, probably better than the time he spent at Chelsea. He then got his move to Bournemouth, and he's doing okay in the Premier League this season. So, he's probably better than Sanchez, right? So, if Penders' performances are compared to that of Petrovic's last season, you might be able to judge if he's better or worse than where Petrovic is, and then if Petrovic is good enough for Bournemouth, who are currently in the top 5-6 teams in the Premier League right now as we speak, he may be good enough for Chelsea, because I personally don't think Sanchez is. And the biggest thing for me with Sanchez, by the way, is I think it's the constant chance of a mistake happening. I actually think as a goalkeeper, if he was solid and he was trustworthy, I don't think there'd be as much discussion about it.
He's decent. This is the thing, right? When people criticize Sanchez, it's not his goalkeeping ability in terms of commanding the box and in terms of saving shots. That's pretty good. But where he lets himself down is distribution. All right, it's improved a little bit, and it looks like there's signs it's improving. But as you said, he lets himself down because of the fact that you're just waiting for a mistake to happen. You know there's errors there, and it doesn't really feel like those errors are disappearing from his game. But then I don't know. Look, Courtois come in reasonably young as well. We do have to remember that.
But he did have a big loan move to Atletico.
He had 3 years at Atletico Madrid, and that's where for me it differs slightly, because he had 3 years in La Liga, right, playing for a top team, playing European football, Champions League, Europa League, and whatnot. Penders, has had one season in Belgium last year, and then he's in France this year, where he's going to be playing Conference League football. That isn't the same level of ready as what a Courtois would have been.
He had Champions League semi-finals against us.
And this is the thing, right? I look at Penders, and I think it's blatantly obvious from the way that things are being reported and from the way that we've not signed a goalkeeper is that they view Penders as the number one, and they're just working out when the right time is to stick him in. And is that after this season, or is it one more season? But can we afford to stick with Sanchez for this season and next season for Penders to be ready? I think that's really the toss-up we've got to make. But if they feel that Penders, if he has a good season at Strasbourg, will be ready next season, then you could understand why a goalkeeper wasn't signed.
That's it, exactly right. But it almost seems like you probably could have paid that money for Mike Maignan, no matter how much it sort of cost, as long as it was, a fair value. Under 20 million, I think would have been fair, to be honest with you. Extremely fair, actually. And then you kind of, you give yourself that cushion, don't you? That you'd have him in goal. And for the next 2-3 seasons, you've got that time for Penders to really develop into like a top keeper, if that's where people believe he can go. But in the meantime, you've got a keeper that you're absolutely fine with having in goal. And I think that would have, softened the blow a little bit of having a young kid developing who we think is promising. But then also at the same time, how many more seasons can we do with Sanchez and potentially drop points or lose points because of him? So, yeah, I think signing a keeper of Mike Maignan's age, profile, ability, I think it would have just been the perfect signing in the summer for the next couple of years.
And it would have allowed Penders to have an extra year on loan.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be that pressure.
3.
And you could have signed Maignan on a 3-year contract or whatever. He does a couple of seasons this season and next season, and then Penders comes in. Yeah. That would have been the way that perhaps would have made more sense. But look, I think Penders will be a very good goalkeeper, but it's so tough to tell. And you look at, again, I'll go back to, if you look at all the top teams, how many top teams have got a goalkeeper under like 22? And
PSG, I don't know. PSG, maybe.
I don't know. Well, Donnarumma last season. I don't know how old Chevalier is.
I think 22, 23 would be my guess on him.
Lucas Chevalier is 23. So yeah, you're looking at how many top sides have got keepers that are, under the age of 23.
Not many.
Many.
Because of how goalkeepers develop as well, isn't it? Right? Like you were saying, people need to realise that someone like Emi Martinez is the best example out there. He was around as a young keeper at Arsenal, and he really wasn't getting the chances. And he went for ages and ages and ages without getting a real chance. And, he's got into his 30s now, and that's where he's playing his best football as a goalkeeper.
But mate, I think but that's the thing with the goalkeepers, though, is that you do develop at a much later stage.
Yeah, the prime example as well, obviously, as a young keeper who people might be more aware of, is someone like that Svila, who was at
Roma now, right? Yeah.
At Benfica, he was like touted to be this great upcoming young kid, and he was like 18, and they gave him the chance, I think, to replace Ederson, and he had a nightmare, and he's been pretty much
really struggled
since like a really disastrous start. And it's only now at Roma is he really sort of starting to look like the promising young goalkeeper that he was quite a few years ago now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think Penders, for me, would benefit from another season at Strasbourg.
Yeah.
If it's 2 years at Strasbourg, like, it doesn't necessarily, I know I said a Premier League loan, and that might be ideal just to have some Premier League experience before. But, we have seen it with goalkeepers coming in from France, and then they go in and they do well. Mendy coming from France and was unbelievable for 18 months. I know it was like 20 odd years ago now, but Czech arrived from Rennes. No one really knew much about him.
Yeah.
Straight away, he was phenomenal. But again, these are guys that have had first team experience for a number of years. Penders hasn't quite had that yet, but it's gonna be an interesting one. But for me, mate, I certainly wouldn't rule out or be surprised at all if Penders is suddenly number one next season. But then obviously that means we've got to get rid of a Jorgensen or a Sanchez. Yeah. So we'll wait and see what happens in that one. Bro, let's talk about the fixtures that are coming up. Obviously, we beat Liverpool last weekend, which was massive for us to get ourselves kind of back on track. We're on 11 points now from the first 7 games. We're 5 points behind Arsenal. And I spoke about this before. If we'd beaten Brentford and Brighton, we'd be joint top. And suddenly there's a very different feel and a very different conversation about what's going on. you look at the next run of fixtures that we've got. And I know football don't work like this, but there's a real opportunity for us now to, between now and the next international break, to put a decent run of wins together. I mean, you look at, oh, let me bring it up on screen now. You look at what we've got coming up between now and the next international break, and is that too small? No, that's good. It's pretty favourable there. You've got Nottingham Forest away on Saturday. You've got Ajax in the Champions League, home at Sunderland, away at Wolves in the Cup. You're home to Spurs. Away at Spurs, away at Qarabag, and then home against Wolves. So that little run of fixtures we've got there between now and the next international break, it looks quite favourable. I mean, what are your thoughts on this next little run of games?
I think that actually this is the sort of time that I really sort of started to see or expect Chelsea to push on. I think with the Club World Cup and how it was, and the sort of, I felt we'd have a bit of a delay going into the season in terms of where we'd be at and how we'd be playing, and just sort of getting back into the swing of things. And I think this is the sort of period now between here and Christmas that I'd really like to see Chelsea push on. I really would like to see us do that. And I think those 8 games there, they all look winnable. I don't want to do too much, but they're the sort of games that Chelsea should be winning without too much stress, without too much difficulty. Yet, look, some of them are going to be tough, but they aren't games that I would put out of Chelsea's reach to win.
No, and do you know what the frustrating thing is, right? You look at the first few games we've had, and you look at that as the next run of games. Like, this is a very favourable start to the season. And it's just so disappointing that we're on the amount of points that we are actually on when we should be on so many more, really. Those next league games, Forest away, Sunderland at home, Spurs away, and Wolves at home. Those next 4 league games, that's got to be 10 points minimum.
At least.
It has to be.
Yeah.
It really has to be. And then the Champions League games, I think, are reasonably favourable as well. Then you've got Wolves in the Carabao. And this for sure has got to be a run now where we're putting points on the board and we're putting pressure on the teams above us, and we're sort of solidifying ourselves in and around where we want to be in the table. Because this next run of games, you start getting to sort of 11, 12 games is slowly when the table starts taking a little bit of shape. But having said that, for the Forest game, I know Forest are in free fall under Ange and they're playing terrible football and they've not won a game since the opening game of the season. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about going to Forest, right? We haven't got the best record there anyway against Forest in general since they came up. It's away from home. It's the 12:30 after the international break. And Forest at some point, I'm not going to just keep losing. Even with Ange in charge, they're not going to lose every single game. There will come a time where they will pick up a result or two. I mean, it should be a game that we're winning and should be a game that we sort of get through reasonably comfortably, you'd expect. But do you sort of have the same kind of concerns that I've got about it? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't, to be honest with you. I don't think Ange and Forest is a match made in heaven. And I personally think, as much as that is probably the worst fixture you want off the back of an international break, I agree with you on that, actually. 12:30, first game on a Saturday. I think that's a nightmare one to get. I think Chelsea win it. I've actually loved going to Forest Ground in recent years, and I think
it's great ground to go to.
Yeah, but I think we've turned up in those games, and I think we've what do we get?
Beaten 1-0 last year to finish in the top 4.
1-0. Then we had obviously the 3-2, didn't we? And I was just trying to think.
Yeah, the 3-2, and then we had a 1-1
draw
under Graham Potter.
Yeah.
And that was like New Year's Day or something.
I feel pretty confident. I've got to be honest with you. I think Ange just doesn't have it as a Premier League manager for me. And I think Maresca probably has his number. I'll be shocked if we lose to Forest. I'd be really disappointed as well, because they're they're up against the ropes at the moment, and I think if Ange stays in charge, they'll go down. And I personally think we might put the nail in his coffin, to be honest with you.
I mean, to be fair, I remember saying that. I remember saying on a few shows before the United game that we were going to send Amarim to the job centre, and that didn't turn out too good for me. So maybe we'll send Ange back to the job centre. I don't know, but I mean, what were you expecting from that game? Because look, there's no getting away from it. You don't want to be away from home or an early kickoff after an international break. Yeah. It kind of resets everything. Forest, we know, are not playing well. We know that Ange is not really getting an awful lot out of them. The players don't look like they're particularly enjoying what's going on there. However, they do have players that can cause problems, and you don't know what we're going to be like. You know, that Liverpool game is gone now. But I almost feel like if you don't beat Forest, the Liverpool game doesn't really count for much. You know, you've got to follow. If you get a win like that, you've got to follow it up by bagging a couple of wins together. You have to.
Yeah, I think that would be so Chelsea in the last couple of seasons for us to win a game like that Liverpool game and then to drop points in a game against Forest, or, you know, to drop too many points in this run where we've got Wolves, Sunderland, Spurs, I think Burnley, games that we should be winning, right? And that would be, you know, last season, I think of that period over sort of Christmas to maybe February, March, where we lost to Wolves. We dropped points against Brentford. I mean, there were a few games, weren't there? Ipswich, I think, was in there. These are the games this season that I don't want to see Chelsea losing, because I think these are the games to judge that we've moved forward as a team. We've got to go out there and win comfortably, because that's what the best sides in the league do. And these teams make it difficult for you. There's no doubt about it. Burnley made it difficult for Liverpool. These teams will make it tough, but you have to, and we should have enough to beat these teams. And then Sunderland, you know, have probably done better than expected, but they look really bad against Man United, right?
Yeah, they were missing a few players. But they've started well, to be fair to them.
They have. I think if I look at that group of teams, I think Spurs are probably the biggest threat in there. But, you know, it's Chelsea playing Spurs, and actually Spurs in the last couple of weeks haven't been great. They probably didn't really deserve to win that game the other day. So I feel confident in all those games. It's just, have we leveled up enough since last season, where these games, you know, they were banana skins for us. We slipped up on that. No one will forget a couple of those games last season where we were really sort of in promising positions. I think of, they're not there now this season, but Everton last season, you know, we went there with a potential to go top of the league.
0-0.
And it was an awful game, and against a really bad Everton team. And they're the games that I think we're sort of facing now in this spell that we've got to do better in. So I think we will. I really do. I think our team is better. I think a couple of players, you know, they might sneak back in from injury in that sort of spell of 8 games.
Yeah.
The games as well, by the way, you know, Karabag, Ajax. I think as much as points are desperate in the Champions League, and we do need to get them, we can rotate in those games and I think get through those fixtures, because if you played Karabag in the Conference League, you wouldn't be surprised. And our C team got through that last season.
Karabag had done Karabag are 2 from 2, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I know saying that, but
yeah, look, we have to manage the squad for sure. And in the Champions League, we need both. We need to beat Ajax and Karabag, basically. We have to, because you've got Barcelona as the one after those 2 games. You don't want to be going into that Barcelona game thinking, shit, we actually need to win this in terms of our qualification. So it'd be good to have 9 points from 12 on the board heading into that Barca game, because after that, bro, we got tough ones. I mean, the 2 games away in Italy are difficult. There's no denying it. And then you obviously finish at home to Paphos, which is, you'd think, is pretty straightforward. But yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I look at this Forest game and I sort of think, there'll be players back. Fofana will be back. Tosin should be back, and Chalobah will be back from suspension. Badiashile and Action-Pong, we haven't really had much of an update on them, although Action-Pong, I think, played for the 21, so I presume he's probably all right. Badiashile, we don't really know. There's been no update on Andre Santos or anything, but now that Romeo Lavia is back fit, that's a big bonus.
How good was he the other day as well?
This is what I was going to come on to. Him back and fit again. Obviously, we don't know how long he's going to stay fit for, but How big do you think that is? Because for me personally, mate, I think that's, I don't want to go overboard and say it's transformative, but it's not far off it. Like, he's actually so in. If you look at all the good games, all of our best games we played, well, not all of them, because he didn't play in a Club World Cup final, whatever. But a lot of our best performances were when Romeo Lavia played.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's almost factually true, isn't it? You can't really disagree with that. So, I mean, he has been a breath of fresh air every time he's sort of come into the squad, because, you know, we've lost him for so long or so frequently that you kind of forget what it's like to have him in the team. And he comes back, and you use the word transformative, but the football we've played when he's been in the team, it has been transformative to what we've played without him in the team. And his ability to progress the ball forward through the lines, to create opportunities and counter attacks. And, you know, he's got that ability to dictate the tempo of the game. He speeds it up when he needs to. He can slow it down and keep the ball, retain it when we need to. He's so intelligent. And I think that's actually something that there aren't many players around these days that have that ability. It's just how often can we get him on the pitch? And he's another one, by the way, that I think whatever they've been doing in terms of his fitness hasn't been working. And they need to drastically change it up. And I think they've done that with Reece, haven't they? They're probably trying to do that with Fofana. And I think that Lavia falls into that sort of boat as well. And they need to do the same. They need to keep him fit at all costs.
Mate, he's such a good player. And do you know what's also so great about him, right? It doesn't matter how long he's out for. As soon as he steps back on the pitch, he's on it and he's straight at the level required.
That's because he is so smart. He's so, obviously he's a great player technically, but his mind is so quick and he's so alert to every situation that I think he finds himself in on the pitch, that he finds it probably fairly easy to just sort of come back into the team and get playing and get things ticking again, because he is that good. And I think you can see some players that spend a lot of time out with injuries and it takes them a while to get going. We've been lucky in the sense for Chelsea that Lavia has not been one of those players, and he's probably a step ahead of that. Can you just imagine if he played every week? We'd probably look unbelievable.
We'd be phenomenal. We'd be absolutely phenomenal. Let's talk Enzo Fernandez. And I'm not sure there's a player who divides the fan base quite as much as Enzo does. I think last season he was outstanding, and I think at the start of this season he's been pretty decent as well. He's played in a more advanced position in the last few games, which I actually think I don't mind it that much if you've got a solid base behind him. If you've got a Caicedo Lavia pivot behind Enzo in a more advanced position, that works fine, or Caicedo Santos, or wherever it might be. What are your thoughts on him? Because for some reason, this guy still seems to be a player who divides quite a lot of opinion amongst the fan base. But mate, I think he's a brilliant midfield player.
Yeah, I really like Enzo, and I really want him to do arguably more than what he's done at Chelsea and go on to have a really sort of stellar career. I think because of how much we paid for him, there's a sense of incredible pressure and incredible expectation on him. And I think unless he's at an absolute sort of 9 out of 10 every game, I don't think it will ever be enough for a certain section of the fan base. I also think he's one of those players that if you don't understand what he's either being asked to do or what he's doing, on the ball, and the reason for why he's making certain decisions, you're never going to be able to see why he's worth having in a team. And there are other things that he brings, I think, to the squad. And you listen to how certain players talk about him. There's so many assets to having someone like Enzo Fernandez in and around the dressing room, in the squad, what he does. I mean, he can not affect a game now. He's got this ability where he might not be running the show in the midfield, but he'll step up with a goal, or he'll get a crucial assist. And I think he's added that. And that can be almost, priceless at times for a player to be capable of doing that. I also think he has the ability to run games. We've seen him do that in a number of different seasons, but I do think there's been games where he's maybe not been at it, or he's not quite got the levels of Lavia at times. I don't think he's as naturally good at running a midfield as Lavia is. I don't think he's quite got... I think, the biggest thing with him, and I think probably the thing that fans get on him the most for, is his ability to get around the midfield. I don't think he looks like a player that can, breeze around the midfield. And the way he sort of moves, it almost seems like it's a bit of effort for him to get around the midfield. And I think that's probably where fans get on top of him. But I really like Enzo Fernandez. And for me, he'd probably be starting week in, week out in the Chelsea team. If Lavia was fit or not, if everyone was fit, he'd still be starting week in, week out for me.
Mate, what do you think of him in the more advanced position? Do you like it? Obviously, with Palmer out, it's, Buonote was there against Benfica and Lincoln. He done okay, but I don't really know if it's a proper solution. Esteval, we've not really seen him in the 10 a lot. Another possibility there. There's João Pedro who could play there now if he played Mark Guy up top. But when you're looking at what Maresca might go with, I think it's very difficult to leave Enzo Fernandez out of this side right now. So given Palmer's absence, we're going to miss the next 4 games. Do you think would you want to see Enzo continue in that more advanced role, or do you think something different should be tried?
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's his best position on the football pitch week in, week out. I'm not even sure if Chelsea's system finds Enzo's best position, by the way. I'm not sure that it does. And I think there are teams out there that would play football in a slightly different way that I think he's more suited to. I think you arguably probably see a better Enzo for Argentina than you do for Chelsea, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in the more advanced position right now with the players we've got out, I think he's doing a great job. And I think numbers-wise, I don't have the stats, but he can't be far off of being up there in terms of output in our attacking players, if you like, because I feel like he's always there to chip in. Even in the Brighton game, he scored a goal. I feel like I see him step up.
I think he's got 3 goals and a couple of assists. I think he's got 5 GA in 7 games.
Well, okay, so if that's what he's got, I actually think that's probably better than João Pedro. I'm not sure, but João Pedro
it's the same as João Pedro. João Pedro's 2 goals, 3 assists, so he actually has scored more goals than João Pedro this season.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, right? I think we're arguably maybe because of his price expecting too much from him, and I think in that attacking role he does a great job. He's got that uncoachable, natural ability to find himself in the right moments. Like we were sort of talking about someone like Tyreek George, Enzo Fernandez seems to know where to put himself on the pitch for the ball to fall.
But that's improved a lot though, because that wasn't something that was.
Is it fitness and license to roam though that's encouraged him to get forward? Because
I also think it's Maresca's instructions to him and maybe the system and what he's asking from him, that he actually understands the role now. Like, he is someone that's arriving late in the box. He is someone that's scoring goals, and all these things are important. And I'd have no issue playing Caicedo and Lavia behind Enzo on Saturday. Enzo in that 10 with that double pivot behind him. I'll be honest, because Esteval's been to Japan and South Korea and he's only 18. I don't see him starting on Saturday.
So we're blessed in those areas, aren't we, to sort of be able to rotate Esteval. As much as Esteval looks brilliant and is probably the most exciting thing to come into Chelsea since Cole Palmer, right? We can sort of give him the benefit of that we could play Garnacho, we could play Neto, we could play, if we had to, Gittins, all ahead of him, in the fact that we're saving him and making sure that, he doesn't burn out and he doesn't end up being one of those youngsters that plays too much at a young age, because his career is currently on a trajectory of wonder kid, and where that could go is amazing. But I look at someone like Lamine Yamal. For the past couple of years, he's played so much football.
That's the problem.
We're now already seeing him breaking down. Yeah. So I don't want that to sort of happen to Esteval. So,
but there is that danger, mate. There's that danger if you play, because he should be playing, he should be starting every week for us, and you want him to start every week. However, we've seen that in the past with players that play a lot when they're young. Michael Owen's a classic example. Sterling played loads when he was really young as well. You don't want to run that same situation. I'm not saying I'm not saying the same thing's going to happen to Lamine Yamal or something, for example, but he's starting to pick up a few injuries. There are a lot of players that are playing so much when they're younger, and actually, is probably better off holding them back slightly and bedding them in so that you actually get more benefits in the long run on that. I mean, I've got players that can fill in. You know, I imagine it'll probably be Enzo, if he's fit, will play in the 10. Neto will play, and probably Garnacho, because Garnacho didn't go on international duty. So I imagine that'll be the situation. Although, to be fair though, mate, how far away do you think Mark Gee is from starting games? Because now that he's played, I'll be honest, mate. You need if Cole Palmer's not playing, you need a creative 10 behind João Pedro for him as a 9 to be worthwhile. I'm wondering whether, because Enzo playing more advanced with Pedro as a striker is not really working. I'm wondering whether a Mark Gee has got a chance of starting against Forest with maybe João Pedro in the 10.
Yeah, I agree with the point on João Pedro not really working. I think João Pedro's the sort of guy, we saw it at Brighton a little bit last season as well, that he almost either, if he's going to play, he needs a number 9 to sort of take away the defenders from him to allow him freedom. And if he's going to play as a 9, he needs a really creative player behind him. And I think we saw that for Brighton last year. And I think we're sort of seeing a repeat this year at Chelsea. And maybe Mark Gee is the type of player. Now, I don't think if Mark Gee plays, I expect a huge amount of output. I don't. But it will be moments like that goal against Liverpool where Mark Gee will take Van Dijk away or will take a player away to allow someone like Enzo, João Pedro, Esteval that little bit of extra freedom on the pitch to maybe crop up with a chance or a goal. And I think that's what someone who's an out-and-out striker brings, just because they have that ability in terms of movement and off-the-ball movement that will always catch a centre-back's eye or a defender's eye, and they'll go with the movement because that's what they've been trained to do. And I think João Pedro could be a successful sort of striker, but I don't think he's an out-and-out striker unless he's got a really useful player behind him. Like I think if he was playing 9 and Cole Palmer was fit week in, week out, you'd get away with it.
Oh, absolutely.
But like you said, without that Cole Palmer and with Enzo's not the same sort of player. He's
not 10. That's the thing.
Exactly right. So maybe that's what you do and you drop João Pedro into the 10. But because Buonannotti's not really been that option, has he either?
No.
So yeah, maybe that's a feasible option, because Mark Gee, you know, in matches has looked okay, and especially if we've got some weaker opposition, you know, they're probably the games that you'd give him a go. I mean, that Sunderland game's on the horizon. I definitely want to play him in that because there's every chance he scores in it the way football goes sometimes. Yeah. So there was some promising stuff said about Mark Gee, obviously, I think just before the Liverpool game. And it was sort of reassuring to hear, because I personally thought that we'd sort of bought him back, and I didn't really understand why if he wasn't even going to get minutes.
Yeah, no, mate, I agree. Do you know what I think as well, right? And maybe people are starting to realise it now, even myself. I think Liam Delap's a bigger miss than Cole Palmer right now. And I don't want people to sort of get that wrong as me saying that Liam Delap's better than Palmer, or is more important to the team than Palmer. What I'm saying is, in terms of allowing João Pedro to play in his best position, I think Liam Delap is a bigger miss at this point in time, because the one game that they played together, admittedly it was against a poor West Ham side, fine, but the one game where Delap played as the 9 and Pedro played as the 10. I know Delap didn't get any GA in that game, but he played really well and put in a really good striker's performance. I actually think we're missing Delap a lot more than maybe fans want to admit.
Oh, I think it's huge. I think Liam Delap is, well, as soon as he pulled his hamstring in that moment, I thought that is huge, because, you know, I actually didn't think Chelsea would act in the way that they would and recall Jackson and, you know, have that recalling Mark Gee and Jackson didn't want to come. I didn't think Chelsea would do that. I actually thought maybe Chelsea would go to the market and buy someone, because I thought, you know, Jackson's done. As much as I probably thought at the same time, Chelsea might not, you know, if they only get the lap, they might not let Jackson go, because, you know, the cover wouldn't be there. And I think right now, arguably, I think it would be fair to say that we can see how big of a miss it is not having Delap in, because he was brought in to be that number 9 and to lead our front line. We can see how big of a miss it was probably to not go and get another one if you knew Jackson was going to leave. And I also think, as much as it pains me to say it a little bit, I think Chelsea are currently missing Nicholas Jackson. Because I think there's a chance for Jackson to be playing right now to prove that he's still Chelsea's best striker in that sense of him and the way that he thinks. Not that I think the fans would believe that, but I think Jackson would believe that, because I think he's a guy that backs himself and believes in his ability.
It is funny how these things work out. If Jackson had actually come back, he'd be playing more football than he's playing at Bayern Munich. Yeah. He would have been starting every week, pretty much.
And I think that Jackson obviously definitely brings more to the team than what than Mark Guy does. And I don't think that's a slight on Mark Guy, but Mark Guy's a youngster. I think if Jackson was playing at the same age as Mark Guy, probably wouldn't be bringing as much to the table as
Jackson wasn't even playing first team football at 19 or whatever.
That's it, right? So I really do think that is a player that I think it's another situation, and it annoys me and it's frustrating that we have to, sort of go and look at the board again and the way things have been managed. But I think it's another one for me that I don't think the board got 100%, because you're only ever one injury away from that sort of scenario arising, and it did, and it's just ever so frustrating. But look, I've read that Delap's recovery is positive. It's moving well. Hopefully he's back sooner rather than later, because that was a player that off the back of the Club World Cup, I was so excited to see going forward into this season. I really, the excitement for him built with me. The more I saw him in the Chelsea team, I really did think that he was perfect for the role. And I'm gutted that we haven't seen him as much.
Yeah, it's frustrating. He should be back like on grass and stuff, maybe towards the end of this month, start of November. But I think till he's back in match day squads, I think it could be after the November international break.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it could be that long. So I think people don't realise, right? It would have been out for 7 or 8 weeks. Then he's got to get back to training on the grass outside. Then he's got to get himself fit. Mate, I think we could be looking at end of November, December.
You never know with a hamstring as well, right? Because you look at someone like Reece, he's had so many problems with a hamstring. A hamstring can either go really smoothly, it happens, it's annoying, but you get over it, or it can go the other way and it becomes this niggling issue.
Look, this is obviously very presumptive, but there is some evidence we've got from it, particularly with hamstring injuries. I wouldn't be surprised if when Delap comes back, maybe at some point further down the line this season, there might be a reoccurrence potentially, because we have seen it a number of times. Now, Reece now that he's had the surgery, that seems to have sorted itself out. Obviously, this didn't require a surgery. Maybe we've got no idea how similar these hamstring injuries are or whatever, but there is always that worry that there could be a reoccurrence of things, and you just really desperately don't want that in regards to Delap, because he is going to be really, really important for us. By the way, guys, make sure you're smashing up the likes. Poor amount of likes in here. Conversion rate really slacking, guys. So if you've not smashed the like button, make sure you do. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. But guys, let's get these likes up. 55 likes is pathetic, people. So guys, have a word with yourselves.
We've got to do better than that.
We've got to do better than that, people. Smash that like button. It's free. It takes seconds, and it does really help out more than you could imagine. So let's run these likes up, guys. It's free. So please do it. It doesn't take long. So make sure you get on with it. What was I going to say? Maresca, that win obviously massive for him. It's so weird, isn't it? Because I remember last time we were talking, it was kind of like, if we don't beat Liverpool, we would have had the international break talking about whether Maresca's the right manager for Chelsea and whether he should stay or go. And that's a very different conversation. Obviously, there's still people in the fan base that don't particularly like him. There's always going to be that pressure when you lose a couple of games as Chelsea manager. Oh my God, is this the right guy or whatever? Well, where are you at with the manager? You happy with what you're seeing?
Yeah, I am. I think Maresca, obviously, from the get-go, I don't think was ever exciting, right? And I think that's always something that's going to be over his head until he starts producing the biggest trophies at Chelsea. I really do think that. The fan base will always sort of hold that underwhelming appointment against him, whether that's fair or not to do so, I'm not sure. I think what we've seen him admit to, obviously, in recent weeks as well, is he's still learning. And I think to do that as Chelsea's boss is incredibly, one, brave to do that, but two, it kind of highlights the type of appointment that we've made. And that isn't someone that comes in with an instant impact, basically. And I think, look, he's been here a while. He's been here a year, and he's won 2 trophies. I think one he had to win. Otherwise, his job may have been on the line in the Conference League. And I think the Club World Cup was a really sort of pleasant surprise that I didn't expect to happen. I think in that time, there's been some real highs and some real lows. And I just think this season, I don't personally want to see as much of a roller coaster. But unfortunately, the way the season sort of started, whether it's him in control of it or not, we've had a bit of a roller coaster start. And I think he has been at fault for a couple of things. But if I zoom out and I look at the way I think his career is going, I think he is getting better as a manager. I think he is improving. It's still so early in his career, and he's got such a big job on his hands, obviously managing Chelsea. And, you know, he's got a turnaround of players that not many other teams have. And he's got new people to work with every season, or even every 6 months, 3 months with transfer windows, the way they come around in football. But I think he's doing probably better than I expected him to be doing at this stage. Did I think he'd still be in his job now? I'm not sure when we first hired him. So I think he's probably proved me wrong on that point. Do I think there are probably better managers out there and better people that I think are fitted to Chelsea? Yes. Do I think there are managers out there that probably play more exciting football? Yes. But do I think Maresca could eventually lead Chelsea to go and win something? I want to say yes. I feel like he will win us something that is of more value to the club than the Club World Cup and the Conference League. I really do believe that.
I agree, but he needs to be given the tools to do it as well. That's also the caveat with it. But no, bro, I agree. Without doubt, he's definitely a better manager. And I think we can all sit here and say, and people in the chat, let us know if you agree or not. He's done a far better job than I think anyone would have expected him to have done, you know, in the time that he's been at the football club. 2 trophies and getting us back in the Champions League is way better than anyone would have expected. The start to the season's been a little bit disappointing, that there's no escaping that. But how much of that is his fault? 2 games, Brighton and Man United, sure, but the others, not his fault, you know. So look, he's learning. I like him. I think he's a decent manager. I think he's doing a good job, and I think if you give him the right tools, he can very much succeed, and I think that he will succeed. But again, Premier League title is obviously a very different kettle of fish. We're not going to win the league this year. We're not good enough to win the league. We're not consistent enough, and we don't have good enough players in the key areas to do that. But at some point, you're sort of thinking this season we need to win something, and so we're not going to win the Premier League. Champions League, never say never, but it's one of them where you're not sort of thinking, oh, yeah, that's a really good opportunity for us. This is why, for me, these domestic cups are so important, because we haven't won a domestic cup since 2018. A performance in the domestic cups last season was really shit.
Oh, so bad. That Newcastle.
Do you think we almost... Do you think... I'm not saying we have to, but I'm going to say it. I think we have to win a domestic cup this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's a must. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think it was really important last season. I actually think Maresca sort of underappreciated what it meant for us to go and win a trophy like that. And I think he kind of got away with it because of what he ended up doing in the Conference League and then the Club World Cup. Had he just won the Conference League, I think people would have said, look, did he do enough last season? Any manager would have won the Conference League. I think that would have been thrown at him, right? I think the Club World Cup was probably a bigger victory than probably what we think the FA Cup and League Cup is. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I felt like it was pretty sizable because of having to play a team of the quality of PSG and a couple of the other teams that we did. So, but I do think there's a point that in England, if you can win maybe not so much an FA Cup, maybe a League Cup, I always feel that midway through the season, if you can get that done, that can really give you a push to maybe do something in terms of going on to win a trophy at the end of the season, whether that's the Premier League, whether that's something in Europe, something in another domestic trophy in England. But I think that's what Chelsea have done so well over the years, is win those trophies. And I think the best managers have put an importance on those trophies. I look at Pep at City.
But they won 4 in a row.
He made such a point of winning those League Cups that team thought they were important trophies to win. And Maresca said, didn't he? He told the players that that the Conference League was the most important thing in their lives and they had to win it. I think, honestly, you should be saying the same thing, the exact same thing about England's domestic trophies, to be honest with you. And I don't see why Chelsea can't win one of those this season. I think it's really important that Maresca does that to get the fans even more on side, because there's definitely still doubters at Stamford Bridge.
Oh, yeah, 100% there's still doubters. I think there will always be doubters. But, yeah, look, a domestic cup has to happen. Mate, I'm happy to win the League Cup. Like, people might think, oh, that's unambitious or whatever. The League Cup's a decent trophy to win. Don't get me wrong, if we finish 4th and win the League Cup this year, then is that progress? Well, it depends on how many points we finish on and whatnot and all that sort of stuff. But it's 1 trophy versus 2 trophies. There's the same league position. I get why people might try and argue against that being progress. But just winning anything is just really vital for the mentality of the group and for things moving forward. If you can keep just adding trophies along the way, you will eventually get to the big ones. And look, I'd rather win a League Cup than win nothing. Each season we want to go into, every season we go into, I'm like, right, win me a trophy. I almost don't care what the trophy is. You've got to be picking up trophies.
As a Chelsea manager, and I think as Chelsea in general as a club, that is what we do. I think what we don't want to see as fans is, that sort of, I look at Manchester United as an example under Ten Hag, that they were winning trophies that I would want to win as a Chelsea fan, but they were doing it in such a manner that was almost disappointing. And it was like they played such poor football. And I would hate for that to sort of develop under Enzo Maresca, but at the same time, I'd never snub a trophy win. And I think that's the fan in me at heart as well, is I want to have those days where you get that level of enjoyment and it makes all of the hurt and the roller coaster in a season worth it, right? I think a League Cup would be a really important trophy to go and win this season. I'd almost value it more than I would the Conference League, I think. I really think that would be a great addition for Chelsea to go and win, because like you said, win trophies, you're going to build a winning mentality. You drive that hunger up even more and you will get to a big one. And I think I said it was so important under Pochettino when we got him in, that we built this winning mentality. He didn't quite manage to do it. Maresca has, and that's where you've got to give him credit. And this young group of players has to, no matter how much talent they've got, you have to turn them into winners and players that are hungry and have the mentality to want to win something every season and get addicted to the feeling of winning. And I can probably guarantee you that event last night, John Terry probably said something along those lines as well.
It's about winning, basically. Like, you just constantly need to be winning. But you look at the League Cup, right? This is the draw for the last 16, right? So we beat Wolves, we're into the quarterfinals. You've got Grimsby and Brentford, Wickham, Fulham, Wrexham, Cardiff, Swansea, Man City, Arsenal, Brighton, Liverpool, Palace, us against Wolves, and you've got Newcastle, Spurs, right? The League Cup, I know people play rotated sides and whatnot, but you imagine Brentford go through, it's probably Brentford, Fulham, Wrexham, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, us, and Newcastle.
Liverpool against Palace, you never know.
You never know. But you get to a quarter-final, but you're still going to, the chances are you're going to be facing a very decent team. The chances are you're going to be facing a City or, an Arsenal or a Liverpool or whatever. Like, the League Cup, I know it's the easiest trophy to win per se in terms of amount of games, but you've got to play top Premier League sides to actually win the League Cup. I mean, Newcastle last season beat Liverpool in the final. They beat Arsenal over 2 legs in the semi. They beat us. Newcastle had to play some decent sides to get to that final and win that trophy. So I know the League Cup is, say, the easiest one to win, but there's some difficult games in there. Look at the teams left, and there's still, if you want to win that trophy, we've got to do something we've not done for. I know we beat Liverpool. We've got to do something that we've not done on a consistent basis, and that's beat a few top sides.
Exactly right, and I think that's why you said it as well. Is we have to make that result against Liverpool in the league mean something and take that forwards to know that, one, we can go and beat other sides of a similar stature, but also go and win games after that and really build something. And I think it is important that the more bigger victories this group of young players get, the better they will hopefully become. And I think ultimately it's a great test. And I look at the two teams that were in the final last season. Eddie Howe, he had that pressure on him. Was he the right man for Newcastle? Did they need to get rid of him and go for a different manager? Was he ever going to win them something? Could he do more than that? He took that upon himself to go and put everything into that competition, win it. It's arguably bought him time and probably reassured people around Newcastle and the football club that he is the right man for the job. And probably it upped his value in terms of where people thought Eddie Howe was as a manager, right? Then you look at someone like Arne Slot. I think he actually paid a lot of respect to that competition as well. Yeah, they had a couple of tight games, I think, earlier on. And I think he suddenly realised that this was actually a competition that was going to be challenging. They probably need to fight to try and win it. And I think ultimately, as a new manager coming into the league, he really respected that competition. All right, he didn't win it, but he got his team to the final and they went fairly close and just couldn't do enough. I think Maresca come into that competition. And, I think against Newcastle, the team he put out, he completely sort of disrespected the competition and what it was about. And ultimately, we were out of it. And that gave him an issue in terms of rotation. Obviously, the Conference League, he was able to. And I think he maybe felt that he had too much on his plate. But I think I think he underestimated what it meant to Chelsea fans to try and win one of these competitions, because there's no better feeling than winning these competitions against big teams in your league and in the country, right? And like you were saying, you look at some of them teams, they're the best of the bunch in England right now. You've got the current FA Cup holders, you've got the current League Cup holders in that mix, you've got the league winners, you've got the league runners-up, you've got one of the best teams over the last sort of 5 years in City as well. They're the teams that I think Chelsea should be mixing with to go and beat and win trophies. And I'd want us to do that. And we should be playing the biggest games against the biggest teams. That's where we've got to as a club. And the reason we are the size of club that we are now is because we had those fixtures in the past and we won them.
Yeah, no, mate, I agree. The last thing I want to talk about for 5 or so minutes was this, with this Antoine Semenyo stuff. There is, I'm not saying I'm going to get him or whatever, but there is a release clause in his new Bournemouth deal. It doesn't state how much it is. Obviously, we know there's going to be a lot of Premier League interest in him. I suspect he'll probably leave Bournemouth next summer. He's the sort of player, and I don't want to sit here and say that I would have been jumping up and down if we signed him in the summer. But when you look at the wingers that we did sign, he's the sort of player that actually sort of think that would have been a lot smarter business than signing a Garnacho and a Gittins, for example. I mean, what are your thoughts on Semenyo? And I'm not saying that Chelsea are going to go for him because I don't think we will, but do you think maybe a bit of a missed opportunity potentially?
Well, it looks as if we potentially missed out when he was at Bristol City as well. I was reading actually for 2 million in something like 2019. Maybe a missed opportunity. I think that it would be fair to say that at least over the last 2 seasons, maybe going into a third now, he's definitely been one of the more promising players in the Premier League. And I do think that if you could have got him cheaper than what he probably would be worth this summer, it would have been worth it. And I think when you look at the fact of Gittins being 55 million, Garnacho obviously costing a lot, I think maybe he's a player that you could have got in and probably considered better value, even if he cost, I don't know what he would have cost this summer, but 65, 70, I'm not sure. Release clause wise, obviously, it'll be a bit steeper. But for me, it's still a player that actually I would probably find value in whatever was paid for him, because I think he's the sort of player that, if you paid 100 million for someone like Semenyo, I think he wins you games of football. And I think he's the sort of player that can make something happen out of nothing. And you can put a price of whatever you feel a player's worth if they've got that ability to do that.
Mate, I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a really good player. The only thing I would say, right, and there's only one way to find out is is when he moves to a bigger team. Is he? Because you see a lot of players that thrive in being the big fish in the small pond.
Yeah.
Like he is at Bournemouth. Everything goes through him. You go to a bigger team, you're just going to be another player. Not everything's going to go through you. And that does take an adjustment. And some players don't really settle into that very well. do you look at that and think, could he be another one of those? Because right now he's obviously the main man at Bournemouth. Everything goes through him and whatnot, and he's playing really well. But we've seen it a lot of times when players from clubs that have gone have moved from big fish, small ponds to a big team, and they're just another player. They find it hard to adjust.
Yeah, they do, and I definitely think that's something in the past that we've seen probably evidently. But someone that gives me sort of hope that wouldn't be the case is I think someone like Pedro Neto was a player at Wolves who arguably looked like the standout player at Wolves, and arguably has come to Chelsea and proved that he fits in at a level above that. I think, yes, Semenyo does benefit from that, but you could also argue that Bournemouth team, when he wasn't available and he wasn't fit at times last season, also did really well. I'm not sure where his future lies. I think he probably could go to Arsenal and do really well, or could go to Liverpool and fit in, definitely. And I think they're both teams that have got maybe room for him in their team, but I definitely would want Chelsea to be in the mix like we sort of touched on earlier. And look, you never know where we'll end up, but I would love for him to be playing for Chelsea because I do think he's probably a level above what we have in the team now, especially in terms of output in front of goal. I think he'd arguably come in as probably our best goal-scoring wide player if he joined the team. I mean, he has the ability to play on both flanks as well.
And he's at that age now. He's 25. He'll be 26 in January. It's a perfect age.
Is that the sort of player, Charlie, right, that fits the bill of what you were saying in the sort of article or the tweet earlier that Chelsea
100%.
would spend? Yeah, I think
100%.
Right?
Well, the problem we've got is there's no space for him.
Yeah, we've got a lot of maybe if George was to leave in January or the summer, maybe they'd say that a space has opened up. Even though
but George is barely playing though.
He isn't. You're right, and arguably,
like
he's only playing because he's playing in a different position, isn't he?
And the freeing up of the space, in my view, has to be one of Neto, Garnacho, or Gittins leaving because Quender's coming next summer.
That's true.
And so we've spoken about this before, but someone has to leave in the wide areas, and George leaving is not gonna be then space for Quender. So
if we're being completely serious here. Right, next summer, Quender comes in. Is there a chance that the most obvious player to leave Chelsea would be Pedro Neto?
Oh, of course it would. By the way, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but
no,
that's the most obvious one. You look at, I mean, it's ridiculous to talk about age because I think Neto's like 20. I think Neto's probably roughly the same age as Semenyo. Pedro Neto he's 25 and he'll be 26 in March. You look at that, right? And if you had to take a guess right now of someone leaving to make room for Quender, the most obvious one is Neto. He's 25.
Because 26. Neto would go for a big fee as well, right? Like a team would value Neto.
Yeah, a team would. I think a team would pay decent money for Neto. Esteval's not going anywhere. Would you move? I mean, you could move Garnacho or Gittins on after a season. I'm not saying that Chelsea wouldn't do that because they absolutely would.
That's true.
But again, if you're looking to move them on after a season, it's probably because they've done shit, and you're not going to. You're going to struggle to get near back what you paid for him. But mate, I fully believe that one way or another, someone does need to leave, in my view, and the most obvious one, and it absolutely shouldn't be the case, but the most obvious one is Neto, which seems mad, because then you might be in a position next season where your four wide options are Garnacho and Gittins and Esteval and Quender.
Yeah, and that's the way it sort of works, isn't it? As a club that has got the amount of movement and volatility in its squad, is that you're constantly looking for a player to have an exit plan. And when you've paid, 55 million for Gittins and you've paid quite a bit of money for Garnacho, you're going to want to make profit on that outlay of money, aren't you? Or at least get the same back. And I think Neto is quite possibly the only player in the team, looking at someone that's definitely increased in value since he's joined the club. But I'm not saying that's what we want to happen, by the way. No way do any of us want Neto to leave. No. But you look at the players and the amount of playing time that they might have, and you think, who's going to go? Someone might have to leave to vacate to make room for that player, or they basically turn around and say to the incoming player, you're either going to go out on loan or you're going to have to fight for a place and there's going to be an extra player for this season, or something like that. But it's a scenario that happens when you make these pre-signings. You're almost inevitably suggesting that someone will depart to make room for that player to come in. And I think it's almost Mudrik's almost had the forced hand in that sense that he was going to move on. And then we obviously saw Tyreek George pretty much nearly leave. And, we've moved on Madueke. I don't think anyone probably thought Madueke would move to Arsenal for the fee that he did. So sometimes transfer fees can sort of surprise
and you
us.
would say that Neto is worth more than Madueke for sure.
Exactly right. I think it would be incredibly unfair if anyone was to pay less than sort of 75 million for Neto.
I mean, we signed him for 51.4.
Yeah.
And so you think you're getting at least, you're thinking 60, 65.
Yeah, at least. And, if he goes on to have like a really good season, then maybe, look, I don't know. Quender's obviously been playing for Sporting Lisbon, and you think he'd be good enough to come straight into this Chelsea side as well.
Well, we've come straight into the squad for sure.
Yeah. So I think he'd be.
But someone's got to leave. And this is part of the problem is when you sign so many players in the similar position, there's just a constant turnover all the time. And particularly the wide areas, we're just constantly turning players over.
Because those players hold probably the most amount of hype and the highest value, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest. I think they view that as the area that they can sign these players, turn them over, cash in on the excitement of the player, and make huge amounts of money. And I think they'll do that. And I think we've already proven that that's probably the route we're going to take. And that's going to be the area of the squad that will have probably the most volume in. But that's what's so frustrating, isn't it? When we spoke earlier a little bit about centre backs and goalkeepers, is that those aren't viewed as bigger assets, and the turnover's not there, right? And we arguably that's probably as fans, that's where we'd want it to be, rather than our best wingers sort of leaving.
But that's where the value is in the attacking players, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And so we'll have to see how it pans out. But we'll round that one out there, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As always, big up to every single one of you in the chat. Guys, on the way out, please smash that like button. Let's get this up towards 100 likes, or as close as we possibly can, guys. So please smash that like button on the way out. Please subscribe if you're new around here as well. Would really appreciate it. So smash the like button, subscribe. Dan, thanks for your time as always, mate. It's always a pleasure to catch up. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, pleasure being on, Charlie. I love chatting about Chelsea during the international break, because we get onto some topics that we wouldn't normally touch on during the season, but it's at BDB Dan on all the socials. Good to see some of the guys in the chat from previous streams, and love seeing some of the questions and points you guys put in. So pleasure being on the channel.
Big up. Make sure you go and check out Dan Guy's channel. Is tagged in the title. Click on it, subscribe, show him some love. Big up to everyone for tuning in as always. Smash the like, subscribe, and I'll catch you lot again tomorrow. Up the Chelsea, and we're out.